When they forced the door open, the television was still on. It had been playing to an empty room for more than 2 years. On the floor lay a small pile of unopened Christmas post. Beside it, a stack of presents, wrapped by hand, waiting to be given. And on the sofa were the remains of a woman named Joyce Vincent. She was 38 years old when she died. She had 4 sisters, a career in the city of London, and a life the people who knew her called glamorous. And for more than 2 years, in one of the busiest corners of London, not a single person noticed she was gone. This is not a story about how she died. No one has ever been able to say for certain how she died. It is a story about how a living, well-liked woman could vanish completely. While her rent was paid, her television played, and the city carried on around her as though she were still there. Because she was never hidden. She was in plain sight the entire time. To understand how that was possible, you have to understand who Joyce Vincent was before that door was closed for the last time. She was born in Hammersmith in 1965, the youngest of 5 sisters, the daughter of parents who had come to London from the Caribbean island of Grenada. Her mother died when Joyce was still a child, and her sisters helped raise her. By her 20s, she had built a life her family were proud of. She worked in the city of London, the financial district, moving between respected firms, and ending up in the Treasury Department of one of the largest accountancy companies in the world. She dressed well. She was charming. People called her a high flyer, the kind of person a room noticed. In 1990, at 24, she stood in the crowd at Wembley Stadium for the concert held in tribute to Nelson Mandela. She was, by every account, fully and vividly alive. And that is the first uncomfortable truth of this story. There was nothing about her that looked like the beginning of a disappearance. It did not look like anything at all. And then, quietly, Joyce began to withdraw. The reasons have never been fully explained, so we should be honest about what we do not know. At some point around the turn of the millennium, she left her job. Colleagues said she could walk out of a role after a single disagreement. She moved often. In 2001, she spent time in a refuge for women escaping domestic abuse. What happened to her there has never been made public, and we are not going to guess at it. What is documented is this. She began to fall out of contact with the people who loved her. She stopped answering her sister's calls. She kept company, more and more, with people who barely knew her. And in February 2003, she was given a small bedsit, a single room, in a block of flats above Wood Green Shopping City in North London. Locals called the building the City in the Sky. Somewhere around December of that year, in that room, Joyce Vincent died. She was 38. And here is the question this entire story is built around. Not how she died, how nobody noticed. Because Joyce was not alone in the world. She had 4 sisters. She had a father, still living, who believed his daughter was alive and well. She had neighbors on the other side of her wall. She had a landlord, a bank, a benefits office, a television license, and a stack of Christmas presents she had bought for other people. Every one of those threads should have led someone to her door. Not one of them did. Her rent, it turned out, was paid mostly through housing benefit, money that moved automatically from one office to another without anyone needing to see her. So for a long time, on paper, nothing was wrong. The payments simply continued, quietly, on her behalf. Her neighbors did notice something. They noticed a smell. But the flats sat above a shopping center lined with commercial bins, and the smell was blamed on the rubbish below. They noticed, too, that her television always seemed to be on. But in a building full of noise, one more murmur through a wall meant nothing, and her family had lost touch with her by then. They did not know where she was living. Some of them, it seems, assumed she had simply chosen a life apart. Her father died in 2004, still believing his daughter was out there somewhere, getting on with her life. She had already been dead for months. For more than 2 years, the automatic payments held. And then, slowly, they stopped being enough. A debt began to build against the flat. A few pounds, then a few hundred, then a few thousand, until at last the housing association moved to repossess the room. In January 2006, their staff came to force the door. Inside, they found a room frozen in the winter of 2003. The heating was still running. The television was still playing. A pile of posts had accumulated inside the door, unopened, for 2 years. And there were the presents, wrapped, ready, waiting to be given to people Joyce had cared about enough to buy for, in the last December of her life. Of Joyce herself, after more than 2 years, very little remained. And that is the reason for the last and cruelest uncertainty in this story. When the pathologists examined what was left, they could not determine how she had died. They suspected an asthma attack or a complication of a stomach ulcer. But suspicion is not an answer. To this day, no one can tell you with certainty what killed Joyce Vincent. That question is simply left open, and it will almost certainly stay that way. What we are left with instead is the harder question, the one with no body, no cause, and no culprit. How does this happen? There is a temptation to make Joyce a warning, to say she was isolated, that she pushed people away, as if that explains it. But that is too easy, and it is not quite true. She was not a recluse. Only a few years earlier, she had a career and a crowd of admirers. She did not disappear into the wilderness. She disappeared into the middle of London. What silenced the alarm that should have sounded was not cruelty. No one in this story did anything obviously wrong. The landlord was paid. The benefits were processed. The neighbors had an explanation for the smell. The family assumed she wanted her distance. Each decision, on its own, was ordinary and forgivable. It was only together, and only in silence, that they added up to a woman lying undiscovered for 2 years, feet from a street where thousands of people passed every day. Her story reached the wider world at all only because, years later, someone refused to let it stay quiet. Her own family did not want it told. That wish deserves respect, and so we have tried to tell it carefully, because Joyce Vincent was not a cautionary tale, or a headline, or a strange fact. She was a person, wrapping presents for people she loved, in a small room where the television was on. The door to that room opened onto a hallway, and the hallway onto a stairwell, and the stairwell onto one of the busiest streets in the city. None of it was locked. None of it was hidden. She was there the whole time, and nobody called.